I know that frustration of using the knowledge that you know and being shocked when somebody tells you something else, like the lymph work. Well, how did I miss this? How did I miss this? And then of course came the rabbit holes and kind of a little bit of a depression, like, so this is my future. You know what I mean? Is my spine going to fuse up and whatever? And so I love all the work with the lymph because it kind of pulled me back out emotionally. I didn't go too far down because I'm like, wait a minute. What I know from following Dr. Perry is he basically just told me I have an inflammatory arthritis issue, and that I have some measure of control, not just with my diet, but with, your lymph programs and stuff like that. And it definitely shortened my freak out leash, kind of feeling like there was something that I could do about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes complete sense. I mean, when you have a sense of empowerment that you can do something to control your health and how you feel, and we all do, right? I mean, honestly, nobody should care more about your health than you do. And your body better than anybody else does. And it's natural to have that kind of response when you get a diagnosis. And of course, the human mind, when you hear something like that, it always goes towards worst case scenario. I mean, that's honestly what it's designed to do, because it's trying to look at all the options, and it looks at worst case scenarios just in case it has to go there. So that's just a survival protective response. So I try to encourage people not to feel too bad when you go that route. It's actually just, it's human nature to do that. It's just don't get stuck there in quicksand. And unfortunately, when you go on to Dr. Google, and you read this stuff, and it's every kind of possible symptom or worst case scenario that you can come up with, and all of a sudden you're like, you start to get symptoms that go with the disease that you didn't have before because you're supposed to have them. And all those things can take over. So education is really powerful in relationship to healing, but it can also be a big negative too. Totally. If you keep that under control. But the key word there is the inflammation, right? You said itis. Itis is, I don't care what kind of itis you got, it's an inflammation response, right? It's like, so the names honestly don't really matter, at least in the world of like chronic pain and autoimmune disease, right? Because you can have itises from significant and severe infections where you need like antibiotics or surgery or something like that. There's different levels of infection and itises, but chronic inflammatory, what they call lifestyle diseases, autoimmune diseases, are long-term systemic inflammation that you've had in your body for probably 20, 30 years. But before they manifest themselves. They just didn't have a name that goes with it yet. You just got the typical, well, it just happens because you're getting older BS, or you're always tired or fatigued or something, because that's just our new normal. Everybody's there. So it's just the way it's supposed to be. And I'm like, not so much. Like, you're supposed to be really, full of joy, energy, have a little bit of pain, then it goes away and stuff like that. But we set a new normal because what's the option, right? I mean, you have to deal with it some way. So you have this, you adapt to the misery, I call it. But there's so many things that somebody can do to help themselves get better from their lifestyles and their behaviors. Even just simply choosing to do it is a huge positive step forward. But also working with this lymphatic system, because honestly, the healthcare community really doesn't look at your lymphatic system in only one case most of the time. Most people hear about lymph as soon after they hear the cancer word. That's about the only time, because you hear it a lot with breast cancer because they have a lot of lymph around the breast tissue and what they call the pectoral region around the shoulder, or axillary region, which is near the armpit region where you put your deodorant and things like that. But I want you to think about this for a moment. Like they say, with cancer, the lymphatic system comes up because they know that cancer can what they call travel, and then the word in medicine for travel is metastasize. It can go from one place and then travel to another place. That's called metastatic cancer. And basically, it's a big fancy word that means travel. And it goes through the lymphatic system. And I thought about that for a second. Well, that should tell you something right there, that it's a system that might be a little important in relationship to going everywhere in the body. And what I firmly believe in my work, from what I've seen from having survived cancer about 18 years ago, and working with people in many different disciplines in different countries, because outside of the US, they're much more open to different kind of treatments for cancer than they are here, is that the premise is that you developed cancer because you had a dysfunction in your lymphatic system long before you got cancer.
Right.
And then that sets the environment for cancer to take hold. Because the reason I say that statement is because the lymphatic system is a fundamental system in your body where, and I use the term body aquarium, so like a fish tank. So I want to kind of explain this analogy, because most people learn when they can reference something else that they're familiar with.
Right.
So if you think about an aquarium that has water in it, and you've got all your different fish and sea life, and then you've got your coral or your gravel or your castles, and you have this beautiful water in there, but it takes a lot to maintain that water, right? And the health of the fish or whatever you have in that tank is beholden to how well the water is maintained. Okay. So basically, to keep the water maintained, you have a filtration system, right? And the filtration system is usually out of sight, out of mind. You don't even see it. It's usually underneath the fish tank, all these different pipes and stuff and filters, and then it keeps that water looking, wow, everything is so beautiful. And if that water environment is clean, life can thrive. And that's the same thing for you. So you are mostly water in your body, like 70 to 80% water, depending on the resources that you listen to. And your cells of your body live in water, right? And you have inside of you what they call interstitial means between tissue, interstitial fluid, or another word is extracellular fluid, extra outside the cell fluid. Then the cells have to live in this liquid environment, and that's held together. Your skin is the outside of the fish tank that holds everything in, right? And inside of your body, you got all these different living fish. You call them cells, right? Or you call them coral. So I say, it could be your neck in there. It could be your hip. It could be your eyeball. It doesn't matter. They're all in the tank. You follow? And so if you think about the fish tank, what happens if something goes wrong with the filter system on your fish tank? Within days, you'll start to see murky water, right? You'll start to begin to have less oxygen in the water because there's not enough filtration. So oxygen decreases. And then you'll start to see bacteria, fungus, and viruses and all this stuff begin to develop along the glass. Or you'll see your fish start to get these crazy markings on them because they start to die.
Right.
And then you'll see all these little yucky, what they call biofilm. It's like slippery, gooky film that goes over all the stuff in the tank. Mm-hmm. And then you set up a stagnant environment where everything is still. The fluid doesn't move or filter. And then what happens eventually to everything in the tank? It slowly dies. It doesn't die fast.
Right.
It dies slow, and it tries to do the best it can in the environment that it's in. That's the exact same thing that happens inside of your body over time. If your lymphatic system becomes dysfunctional, and I tell people, why does that happen? Well, because you're alive on the earth in today's age with man-made stuff, and it's overloaded. And you don't do some of the things that move the lymph. So your filter is dysfunctional. So it works, but it doesn't work great.
Right.
And then inside of your body, all that fluid starts to stagnate. And then you actually begin, this is what happens inside of your body. You don't have enough oxygen inside your water, and then cells need oxygen. If cells don't get oxygen, they cannot regenerate. They can't make new ones. And what happens when you can't make new cells? I got news for you. You stay sick. That's what happens to you. Right?
Yeah.
And then when that water doesn't have oxygen and it gets murky, you also can't get nutrients into the cells in order for the cells to be able to heal and regenerate, because they're living in their own waste. So even if you did get nutrients into the cell, they get the waste comes out of the cell once they use it, kind of like when you go to the bathroom.
Sure.
And then if the waste can't get out of your body, it stays around the cell. And then you get endotoxins. Endotoxins is where you become toxic. And just like in the fish tank, what happens inside of you is you already have inside of you, everybody's got a parasite, a bacteria, a fungus, and a virus. It's part of being alive on this planet. If you say, no, I don't have them, you're wrong. Everybody's got them.
Right.
And you need them, actually. They're critical for life, survival, and thriving. If you didn't have those, you would not be alive. So you need them. That's what we call an interconnected ecosystem, where everything on this planet has to work together.
Okay.
But here's what happens. Too much of anything is not good.
Sure.
You need balance, right? You need harmony. You need yin and yang. And all those viruses, bacteria, fungus, and parasites, they thrive when you don't have oxygen. So they come out in a deoxygenated environment, and then they take over. And then they create what they call their own bio. It's actually called a biofilm. And they release a biofilm to protect themselves. And then that biofilm, it layers on itself, and they just go and they start to hide inside of the tissues, because they're trying to escape your immune system, because they don't want to go anywhere, because they're taking advantage of you as an opportunistic host. That's what they do. And because if you die, they die. So they're just going to do what they can to hide and not get killed off. But here's what happens with autoimmune disease, where your body, quote unquote, starts attacking itself. It never attacks itself. It's being tricked. So it's trying to go after those things that are wrapped in biofilm. And even when you attack the biofilm, when you begin to do that, that releases toxins into the body.
Sure.
It's called LPS, lipopolysaccharides. That's what really gets you when these things break down. So your body, here's the thing that I try to tell people to reframe it. Your immune, when you have autoimmune disease, that means your immune system is actually too damn good.
Okay.
Because it's over protecting you. It's going and going and going and going, and it's trying to go like this. It gets maladapted. What that means is it just keeps driving in one direction to try to help you. It just overcompensates like that. And then, so I said this, okay, let's go back to the analogy. Well, what you can do is, if you have that tank, if the tank looks terrible and you got dead fish, you could go in there and you could clean the tank. I could change the water. I could go buy new fish. I could clean everything, put it back in the tank, put brand new water in the tank, and then it looks great again. But if I don't do anything to the filter system, what happens to the tank again in about a week?
Right.
Same damn thing. Right? And that's what medicine does. Medicine goes after the damn stuff in the tank. And that's okay, because you need to do that, right?
Right.
But you have to go after the filter system at the same time, because you have to get rid of toxins if you're ever going to heal yourself. So what you do is this. You do all that stuff, but then you go after the filter system as well, and then it can maintain. Because I've always been trying to look for an underlying reason of why do we do all these wonderful therapies and all these interventions? Because
Sure.
they all work. That's the dirty little secret. But why do they not stick? Like, why do they keep coming back? There's got to be a reason for it. And to me, I think I found the underlying answer with the lymphatic system, because I use a phrase all the time that I read somewhere. I wish I could remember who said it. It said this: you cannot get well in the same environment that you became ill within.
Right, right.
You cannot get well in the same environment you became ill within. Your external environment, but all your